All right. Hello, Amsterdam. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so hyped to be here with all of you. Let's see. That's not going the right way at all. All right, sweet. So, I am here to talk about building blazing fast sites with Gridsome. I hope you liked my walk-on music. Preparing talks is relatively hard, so thank your speakers. If you see them, give them a high five. Picking walk-on music is so much harder. You know how many songs there are on Spotify? I looked it up. It's like 90 million songs, okay? So 1 out of 90 million is not an easy choice. Anyway, thought you needed to know that. I am Jake Dohm. I'm a web developer. I work for a company called Goodwork, we build websites with Vue, Tailwind, and Craft CMS. And I'm here to talk about Gridsome. So what is Gridsome? Gridsome is a Vue.js framework for building static sites and more. So to give you a little more info straight from the Gridsome documentation, Gridsome makes it easy for developers to build modern websites, apps, and PWAs that are fast by default. So there's a lot there, and we're going to kind of unpack a bunch of those different pieces. So Gridsome is also a Jamstack framework. And raise your hand if you have heard of the term Jamstack. Okay, it's a pretty good percentage. So the definition of Jamstack is a tech stack to help you create fast and secure sites and dynamic apps, so not just basic sites, with JavaScript, APIs, pre-rendered markup served without web servers. So the point of Jamstack is really building static sites. But what is a static site? There are 3 types of ways to build a Vue application. The first is to build a client-side application. Client-side applications are pretty much when you ship your code, like if you looked at the HTML, it's like, you know, head tag, body tag, and then there's like a div, and you're like, okay, like what's going on here? So then your JavaScript finds that div, it's like you're mine now, and it renders out a bunch of stuff. This is really great. This is a concept that really came into play a couple years ago. Facebook built client-side apps with React, and a lot of people have been building client-side apps, but there are some drawbacks of client-side apps, especially back before they became more mainstream, like SEO and performance. There are some things you have to watch out for when building client-side apps. So then people started building server-side apps with Vue and these frameworks. And server-side apps have been around forever. Like PHP apps are all server-side, but to run a Vue app in a server-side way, you deploy a node server. So then when someone hits the browser, that browser will send a request to your web server, and instead of just giving you back something, it'll actually pre-render out that page content, render out your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and ship that back. So that's good for performance and SEO. But there are drawbacks with that too, because you have to maintain all these web servers to serve that content. So then there's a third type, which are pre-rendered static websites. So this is where you write your Vue application in a way that's comfortable for you using components, and it's pre-rendered, so when it hits the browser, it's just like a server-side render, but you actually do that render at build time instead of at request time. So before when you ship the website, some sort of CI/CD platform or something like Netlify will take your code, it'll bundle it all up, it'll render out all your pages and routes, and it'll prepare that so when someone requests a web page, you don't have to do anything. You just give them the static file. So you've probably heard of Jamstack. Jamstack is so hot right now, but I think it lives up to the hype. It is very hyped, but I don't think it's overhyped. So I want to get into why I believe that, because that's probably a pretty dangerous remark. Let's talk about the benefits of Gridsome. A lot of these are actually benefits of any static site generator, so they'll work for a Jekyll site, Nuxt, Gridsome, Gatsby, Next, any type of framework like that that does pre-rendering. The first one is developer experience. Gridsome has an amazing plugin ecosystem, which is one of its many awesome developer experience. And so you can one-click install plugins that do anything from inlining your critical CSS to creating an RSS feed. This is an awesome experience because you get a lot of functionality that you would normally have to write yourself right out of the box, and they're built to work with this framework. So they're generally going to work. You're not going to do a lot of Googling, like how to use critical CSS with Vue. it's just going to be one-click install. A lot of their plugins are really nice. And then you have source plugins. Source plugins allow you to get content from any source and pull that into your Gridsome application and then use that in your templates. So that's one of the biggest aspects. So we're going to dive into that later. But like you guys work in front end, you all know this is true. If you're driving down the road, front end developer, and it's like user experience, developer experience, that developer is like whipping it over onto the exit lane so fast, right? Like we love to have fun and to not do hard things, which is like, that's fair, right? But you don't want to sacrifice user experience for developer experience. So Gridsome doesn't sacrifice your user experience. It actually leverages a good developer experience to promote good user experience by making the right thing to do easy. So things like, inlining critical CSS, performance, code splitting, all that stuff that you should be doing for your users to make your site fast and performant and work well for your users. Gridsome makes that the right thing. It makes that the clear path for you. The second benefit of static sites in Gridsome is performance, like I've been talking about. So you get pre-rendered HTML, automatic code splitting. Gridsome follows the purple pattern, which if you haven't heard of that, that is a pattern publicized by Google. So you push critical resources out. So you actually push those kind of ahead of your page, and then you render that route they requested. You pre-cache any routes that they're not on but they might use, and then you lazy load any remaining routes on demand. And then, so that's one, it's nice that they kind of follow that pattern that Google recommends, because it means you're going to have good performance. Google's going to like your pages, which is like half of our job as web developers. Okay, maybe not quite half. You have smart link prefetching. So if you're on a page and you're scrolling down and you're like, I think I'm about to go to that page. Gotcha. Gridsome knew that. It read your mind. So it'll find those links on the page. It'll know you're about to go there, and it'll load it in the background. So when you click it, the page is already loaded. Literal magic. Or a intersection observer. Progressive image loading. So if you've ever been on Instagram or Medium and they've loaded in your image in a beautiful way where you get like a nice, let's see, do I have to click this or something? All right, you guys know how Instagram works, right? I'm going to move on. Instagram images, pretty sweet. It'll inline your images if you want it to, so that you get a small version inlined on and like blurred out on the initial page load, and it'll load in the full image as you go. I was about to go. All right. CDN-based hosting. So because you don't have to run a web server for this and you're just deploying static files, you can actually deploy your site straight to at the edge of a CDN, so that someone in Amsterdam hitting our website doesn't get it from a US-based server that could take some time. It'll actually get it from a server somewhere nearby. So after all these performance optimizations, your site's going to be running like Sonic the Hedgehog. A third benefit of Gridsome in the Jamstack is security. So you can actually put your CMS or wherever if you're hosting your content somewhere or your backend of an application behind some sort of firewall, so that only your CI/CD platform and this Gridsome application can access it, which can make your application much more secure because it can't be accessed from anyone but you. And then lastly, a Jamstack website, the scaling is easier and less costly. Gatsby actually recently released a case study in which a client's costs were reduced from $2,000 a month to $60 a month, which is a 97% cost reduction. So you can save a lot of money by not spinning up a ton of servers and having that architecture to handle all those web requests. So those were the benefits of Jamstack and static sites. Now let's talk about Gridsome specifically and what its role in all of this is. First of all, I want to mention there were a lot of emojis in there. Alex loved his talk. The content was great. The emojis were better. So anyway, let's talk about Gridsome. What does Gridsome really do? Because I talked about a lot of things, but which of those are specific to Gridsome and how does it work? So the first thing it does is it renders pages built with Vue components to HTML and CSS at build time. So you write your templates in Vue just like you would in a regular Vue application for the most part, and it pre-renders those. So you get to work with all the tech you're familiar with and you love in a way that works for you. it provides a centralized, Gridsome provides a centralized GraphQL store for any data that you'll utilize in your Vue templates and components. So if you have, I'm going to talk about this more, I'm going to demo this in just a minute when I get wrapped up here, but you can pull content from, say, like a Shopify API, WordPress, a Markdown file, a JSON file, pull all of that into your application, but instead of having to deal with all those sources, you actually deal with those in a centralized place, and then you can just query one GraphQL schema for that, which makes it a really, really nice user and developer experience. Number 3 is it abstracts Vue configuration. Who here has written a Webpack config? All right, you should all seek help. You need counseling. Come talk to me after. I'll refer you to someone. But Gridsome abstracts a lot of that configuration that you need to do to have a performant website with code splitting and all that away, so you don't have to deal with it. Best practices taken care of for you. And number 4, it provides features that are outside of Vue's scope. So Vue is a Vue library, right? It does some things for you, and then it has first-party libraries to do some things for you, like routing, which we just heard about. Gridsome takes that core of Vue and builds on that to give you a lot more features. And then lastly, it makes best practices for performance, SEO, and user experience the default, which is great for working with teams of any size and of any level of developer. Gridsome, if you're working with that, even your junior developers are hopefully going to be working within a system that helps them to do the right thing, which is how Gridsome works. So let's talk about how it works. This slide, I think, is pretty helpful from the Gridsome website. It takes all your content from any type of system. It pulls it in, so you have content and templates. It smashes them together and renders it, and then it lets you deploy that literally wherever you want to. Someone tweeted this past week. I'll let you read this. It's like, this guy gets it, right? Like, he blew me away with how much he understood, and I could never summarize it this well, so I'm not even going to try to. This guy knows what's up. Gridsome is awesome. Gatsby is. Static sites are. All right. I am going to now jump into a live demo. It's the end of the day, so if this crash and burns, you guys get some entertainment, and if it doesn't, then you get some education. That's a win-win. All right. So I'm going to jump into this application. I'll hide these guys for a while. I built a little application for you. It looks like I need to mirror probably. Sweet, let me hop over and do that. All right. And I think I just quit VS Code. Nope, it's back. All right, sweet. Bring that up. Make this fit. I'll make everything a little bigger. Let's see, let me open a file, and then you guys can tell me when to stop. We'll just go ahead and open the index page. Is that good? Can you read that? Sweet. Awesome. So I built a little test application. I did say we were going to build an application. I may have cheated a little bit, and I built out a little bit to start with, so we have a base, so you don't have to watch me do a bunch of boring stuff. This is our base, but this is like a website for recipes for drinks, and then we've got an about page and some articles. We're going to build all this out in the next 11 minutes and 53 seconds. So let's jump right in. So I have this about page. It doesn't go anywhere right now, so we actually need to add that. So I'm going to jump into my code. You'll see I have a source directory, and within that is a bunch of different directories. One of them is pages. So all I need to do to create a page within Gridsome is just create a new file, and it'll automatically create a page for me. So I'll add a template, and I'll use a layout, which is a Gridsome feature. Built on top in components and slots, very simple. And then we'll go div.content, give me a little wrapper, and we're going to say, hello, Amsterdam. I can't believe I typed Amsterdam right first try. All right, sweet. And doesn't like something. Yeah. Okay. I may have celebrated too soon. Sweet. So I'm going to go over to /about, and you'll see we have a new page just like that. So now we need a link to it. So I'm going to jump into my nav component. And we're going to change this A tag to a G-link, which is a Gridsome component, which lets you link to pages. So instead of linking to them in a direct way, it'll actually load them in the background. Let's see, I forgot how to code. Nope. All right. Work, please. All right, I'll do these one at a time because apparently my cursor selection is like, not today, sir. Not today. All right, cool. All right, let's try this one more time. its option, right? There it is, glink. Okay, we're just going to switch that tag over to a glink, and then we're going to switch this href over to a 2, which is the API for this. Not sure why they didn't stick with href. I guess it makes sense. And the recipes is the home page. The about will be an about page, and then we'll get to an articles page later. Okay, cool. So we're going to hop over to here, refresh. We'll head home, and we'll click the About page. So it's actually loading this in the background. It's pulling a JavaScript module and rendering out that page, so it's a really performant way to do it. And like I said, it's actually pre-caching that ahead of time. It sees a G link on the page. It's like, oh, where is that? Let me get it. So by the time I clicked it, that had already been loaded and ready to go. All right, cool. So I'm going to go to the home page. One gin and tonic recipe with no picture and no details is not going to get us any fun. So let's pull these recipes. I have these in a CMS called Craft, which exposes a GraphQL API. So what I'm going to do is open my Gridsome configuration file, which is right here. And I'm going to pull a little snippet. I'm going to cheat and grab this configuration, and then I'll talk about what it does. So Gridsome has a first-party plugin which allows you to automatically integrate with any GraphQL API. So let me show you right now how this is working. If I come over here, you'll see this is a API. It's Gridsome's built-in API, so you can see I can query against this and maybe get some metadata. But I don't have any other data in here right now. There's like some pages, so I can get like all page, and I could do title, and you could see I like have a home page and an about page. It wants me to do some stuff. I'm not going to. Anyway, I can query for things, but I don't have any other content in here right now. But I can hook this up very easily to another backend API. So this is just going to take the API I pointed at and merge that whole thing in for me, and it's just going to put it under a field name craft. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to rerun Gridsome develop, which is their built-in command, which I will soon be running with the new JS GUI, which is going to be pretty sweet, JS GUI. And okay, I'm going to go back here, I'm going to refresh, and I should be able to now run this query, which queries for recipes on that craft instance. And here they are. Okay, cool. So I have this data in my GraphQL instance built into Gridsome, but now I need to use it in my template. So I'm going to jump over into my index template, which is the recipes page that I was showing you. And so I'm looping over these. I'm not looping. I'm just passing one recipe for now. So I need to get those recipes. So instead of coming down and doing something in the script here to make a fetch request, I have that data ready to go for me. So I'm going to come down, and I'm going to use a Gridsome feature called Page Query, which lets you query against your local schema of content that you've already pulled in and meshed together, ready to be used. And I'm going to copy this query into here. And then it's going to make this query against our local schema, and it's going to make all this data available to me in the template. So I'm going to loop over here this data that I'm getting. So I'm going to go for recipe in $page, which is the responsive page query, .craft.recipes, and then I'll add a key because of things. No one knows what keys are. I know you would be like, no, I know. You don't. I read the article too. Still have no idea. Seriously. All right, so I'm going to pass this recipe in, and unless I made a mistake, which is probable, there you go. There's all of our recipes. Yeah. Pretty sweet, right? Okay, so let's see. Did I link this up? All right, so I'm going to open up this recipes component, and we need to, oh, no, I'm not going to do that. What we need to do is we need to make it so we can actually show the details for the recipe, right? So we have a listing page. We need an individual recipe page. So we have data, but we don't have routes created for that yet. So I'm actually going to show you two ways to make routes on your data, one for this and one for the articles. So I'm going to jump over. I'm going to copy my snippet, which is, nope, I'm not. All right, so I'm going to go to my Gridsome server file. So this is the stuff you run when everything boots up, and this will be run at build time. So I'm just going to uncomment this, and I'll walk you through kind of what we're doing, because I don't want to write this all out on the fly. No way I would remember this was that, like 30 lines? No. Short-term memory. All right, so we're going to export a function that's going to run at build time. we're going to use this create pages API, which Gridsome exposes to us. We're going to get GraphQL from that, which will let us query our local GraphQL server. Again, we're not making remote queries. That's already been done for us. The first thing it does is see like what content do they want. It goes and gets it and merges that in together, so it's ready to go. So I'm not going to be at any other point in this presentation querying for anything. It's ready to go. I'm only going to be querying the local schema that we have built ready to go for us. So we're going to query for some data. We're just going to get these recipes, very similar to how we were doing it in the template, and then we're going to loop over each one. We're just going to for each, and we're going to create a page. We're going to pass it a path, a component to use, which is in our templates directory, and we're going to pass it a little bit of context. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to rerun Gridsome develop, and it's going to take a second here, and then while that's running, I'm going to go over and link this up. So I'm going to go into the recipe component, and I'm going to change this A to a G link, and it's going to go to, and I'm going to bind that, and then just pass it a string / recipes / slug recipe slug. Okay, and then don't forget that. Boom. Okay, save that. Should come back over here, refresh this, and we should have our recipes. Sweet. There you go. So here's a gin martini recipe for anyone who's interested in that. So I'm going to give you a quick peek at that component, and then or that page component, so you can kind of see how we're querying for that data, and then we'll move on. So we're going to go to the recipe template. You'll see here this page query, it works the exact same way as the other one we did, but it actually is using that ID that I passed in the context, so it can get the data just for this page. So if we go back and we look at the server, you'll see in the context, so when it creates this page, you pass it a context and we pass in this ID, and then within the recipe template, we're going to do a page query. We're going to do a basic query against our internal schema, and we're going to pass this ID parameter. We're going to query for only this entry's data, and then we're going to use that within our template. So if you come up, I probably have like a computer property for recipe, which is just like this.page.graph.entries. So very similar to how we're doing it the other way, but that's how you like get your data from within a single page template that's based on a collection of templates. All right, the last thing we're going to do is to show you how you can use different types of data. So we've got this type of data. It's working great. We're good to go. But what if we wanted to use like articles, and we didn't want to put those in CMS. We just want to write those in Markdown. Developers love Markdown. No one to this day has figured out why, but they just really do, okay? So we're going to jump in here. I'm going to show you under the source directory, we have this demo post, which has got some variables at the top, title, published, a cover image, and a slug, and then we've got some content. So what we're going to do is we're going to hop over and grab this configuration, and we're going to use another type of source plugin. These are both source plugins, the one I showed you earlier for stitching in a GraphQL schema and this one. So we're going to open back up our configuration file, Gridsome config, and we're going to toss this in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, find every Markdown file under source content articles, and then pull that in and make a collection. This is this type name. Make a collection of content called articles. So I'm going to run that, and I also need to provide. Let me switch back here. I'm going to grab this, and then I'll say what it does. I also need to provide a template for this, and we'll come back and look at that in just a second. All right, so we're going to rerun Gridsome develop for the very last time. As long as I didn't make a typo, then it will be the second to last time. And as long as that works, I'm going to hop over and show you a new query here. All right, sweet, that worked. So we're going to come over, refresh, and you'll see I'm now able to query for all article. Probably should be all articles. May have typoed there, maybe like a Gridsome thing. But I'm able to query for all of those articles that we just pulled in. So literally all I'm doing is say, find this stuff, make a collection, and then any type of collection you can query for, just like this. So you'll see I can query for it against our local schema. What I also can do is say, in my configuration file, for every item in this collection called article, just make a route at /articles, and then you see like this colon here, which says like this is a variable, and it'll take that slug variable. So if I go to back to our demo, and I go to /articles/ demo post is apparently what I named it, then you'll see here it is. And I can jump over into that code and show you how that looks. I'm just going to jump into my article template. Actually should have this here, and you can see, oh yeah, the last thing I'm going to do is query for these articles. So I'm going to go to articles.vue, and I'm going to uncomment this query because I was lazy, and I have 15 seconds left. And I'm going to uncomment that, and then I'm going to template for these. So I'm going to say for article in page.articles.edges. I always forget the edges. I got it this time. All right. And then we'll see, here's my demo post. And I can click that, and it goes to blog/demo post. But if I correct that path, articles/demo post, there we go. All right. All right. The last thing I want to say is, should you use Gridsome? We heard a lot about Nuxt this weekend. Nuxt is an amazing framework. I love it so much. I love Gridsome. I love Gatsby even. Whoa, tomatoes, dodge them. Yeah, right? So should you use Gridsome? I don't know. How would I possibly know that? I think everyone should evaluate which frameworks trade-off fit best with your project. So Nuxt has trade-offs. Gridsome has trade-offs. Look at them. Try them out. Try every one of them out. Spin up a new project. See how it works for you. And then, build static sites one way or another. I'll leave you with this quote: in any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing, the next best is the wrong thing, and the worst thing you can do is nothing. Thank you.